Welcome back to the channel. Sometimes the most ordinary moments hide the deepest mysteries. It was a bright summer afternoon in London, July 28, 1986. Office workers hurried through Fulham's quiet streets, cars lined the curbs, and life moved at its usual pace. Among them was Suzy Lamplugh, a 25-year-old real estate agent, young, confident, and full of ambition. She had a simple appointment that day, one that seemed no different from any other, to meet a client named Mr. Kipper and show him a house on Shorrold's Road. That meeting would be the last trace anyone ever had of her. At first, no one suspected anything unusual. Suzy was known for her professionalism, punctual, detail-oriented, and careful. When she did not return to her office that afternoon, colleagues thought she might have gone to another viewing, but as hours passed, concern turned to fear. By evening, her manager reported her missing. Police later found her white Ford Fiesta parked near the showing location. The door was unlocked, her handbag still inside, and the car key was gone. There was no sign of struggle, just an eerie stillness that made investigators feel she had simply vanished into thin air. Suzy's disappearance struck a chord across Britain. A young professional woman, gone in broad daylight, from a safe neighborhood, it was every family's nightmare. The press quickly picked up the story, and the name Mr. Presses, Kipper, became a chilling mystery in itself. Who was he? Why did she trust him enough to go alone? Her diary entry for that day, 12:45, Mr. Kipper, 37 Shorrold's Road, became one of the most haunting lines in modern British crime history. In the days that followed, hundreds of officers searched parks, rivers, and empty lots. Volunteers distributed leaflets. Psychics offered help, but no trace of Suzy was ever found. It was as though London had swallowed her whole. The case exposed how vulnerable young professionals, especially women working alone, could be, and it changed the way the real estate industry approached personal safety. Her parents, Paul and Diana Lamplugh, refused to let her memory fade. They founded the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, an organization dedicated to promoting personal safety and awareness of stalking. Over the years, that trust has trained thousands, campaigned for better protection laws, and inspired national discussions about safety in public life. Still, beneath the activism, there remained an unanswered question. What happened to Suzy that day? Theories came and went. A targeted attack, a chance encounter, a premeditated crime. Yet, without evidence or a body, truth stayed just out of reach. Even now, nearly 4 decades later, the story of Suzy Lamplugh is not only about loss, it is about a society learning sometimes too late that safety is never something to take for granted. And so, we return to that July afternoon when one woman went to meet Mr. Kipper and never came home. In the days that followed Suzy's disappearance, London transformed into a city on alert. Posters with her smiling face appeared on buses, in shop windows, on telephone poles. A haunting reminder that someone could simply vanish in daylight. Police officers combed through the streets of Fulham and the nearby parks, hoping for even the smallest clue. But nothing surfaced. No body, no struggle, no trace. It was as though the world had erased her. For Suzy's family, the absence became a wound that never closed. Without a body, there was no proof of death, just silence, endless speculation, and the faint hope that maybe, somehow, she was still alive. That hope would fade slowly, year after year, replaced by a quiet, exhausting grief. Investigators faced the same void. No witnesses, no surveillance footage, and no forensic trail. The car offered no fingerprints beyond Suzy's own. The last confirmed sighting was her walking toward Shorrold's Road, holding her appointment folder. After that, nothing. The case captured the nation's imagination, not only for its tragedy, but for its chilling simplicity. There were no screams, no suspicious calls, no ransom notes. Just one missing woman and a single, mysterious name, Mr. Kipper. Journalists and detectives alike wondered what those last minutes must have been like. A polite smile, a handshake, a door closing behind them, and then an ending no one could see. As months turned into years, each search ended the same way, with headlines, hope, and heartbreak. Fields in Gloucestershire, canal banks in Worcestershire, derelict properties once tied to suspects all dug up, all empty. The absence of a body became the case's cruel signature. For police, it meant they could not confirm murder. For her parents, it meant they could not properly mourn. Even now, decades later, that emptiness defines the story. It is not only about who took Suzy, but where she is. Every anniversary brings back that same unanswered question, one that outlived suspects, theories, and generations of detectives. A missing body does not just stop an investigation. It freezes time. And for Suzy Lamplugh, time never really moved forward. When police located Suzy's white Ford Fiesta, it became the case's first and only tangible lead. The car was found on Stevenage Road in Fulham, about 1.5 miles from the property she was supposed to show. To any casual passerby, it looked ordinary, neatly parked, no sign of damage. But the details inside told a more unsettling story. The driver's door was unlocked, the key was missing, and Suzy's handbag was on the passenger seat. Her purse still had cash inside. There was no evidence of robbery, no fingerprints other than her own, and no blood or signs of a struggle. It looked as though she had simply stepped out of her car, expecting to return in a few minutes, but never did. That small, unremarkable. Ford became a symbol of everything baffling about the case. Detectives tried to reconstruct her movements, who she met, whether she got back into the car after the meeting, or whether someone else drove it to where it was found. But the timeline refused to make sense. Several witnesses recalled seeing a woman matching Suzy's description, talking to a man near the house she was scheduled to visit. Yet descriptions of that man varied wildly. Some said he looked confident. Others said nervous. None could agree on his age, build, or hair color. Police examined the house itself, 37 Shorrold's Road, but there was no evidence anyone had been inside that day. No fingerprints belonging to a stranger, no signs of forced entry. The name Mr. Kipper was not linked to any real client in company records. Whoever he was, he had created an identity just for that meeting. As the search deepened, investigators realized something chilling. The person Suzy met had planned the encounter carefully. He had chosen a public setting that seemed safe, used a fake name, and managed to vanish without leaving a trace. It was organized, deliberate, not the act of a random predator. The Ford Fiesta was towed away, dusted for evidence, photographed from every angle. It held all the hope the investigation had, and all its frustration too. For Suzy's parents, it was the last physical object that still connected them to her final day. For detectives, it was a silent witness that refused to speak. As the months dragged on without progress, the police began to suspect that Suzy had not simply vanished by chance. Attention slowly turned toward a man already known to the criminal justice system, John Cannan. He was charming on the surface, well-spoken, and persuasive, the kind of person who could easily gain a stranger's trust. But beneath that facade lay a darker record: armed robbery, sexual assault, and, later, murder. Cannan had been released from prison only days before Suzy disappeared. His profile matched the behavior described by witnesses: confident, polite, possibly posing as a businessman. Detectives noticed several unnerving coincidences. His ex-girlfriend once lived near Shorrold's Road, and he was known to use aliases when arranging meetings with women. Some even believed the name Mr. Kipper was a twisted joke, prison slang for to be caught or to die. In 1989, he was convicted of kidnapping and murdering another woman, Shirley Banks, in Bristol, a case disturbingly similar in pattern. That conviction only deepened suspicion. The press began labeling him the likely killer of Suzy Lamplugh, though legally he was never charged. Police believed he had lured Suzy under the pretense of viewing a property, overpowered her, and disposed of her body somewhere remote. But there was no physical proof, no confession, no witnesses. Years later, new forensic technology and renewed searches brought the case back into headlines in 2000, 2010, and again in 2019. Investigators dug through gardens and farmland once connected to Cannan's relatives, hoping for a breakthrough. Each time, the results were the same: nothing. Cannan himself always denied involvement, though his evasive interviews and smug confidence left many unconvinced. When he died in prison in November 2024, at age 70, he took whatever truth he knew with him. For Suzy's family, it felt like the final chance at answers had vanished. The man long believed to hold the key to her fate was gone, and silence settled once again over one of Britain's most haunting mysteries. The Suzy Lamplugh investigation quickly became a test of patience and persistence, one where every promising lead dissolved into thin air. For detectives, the greatest obstacle was not who, but what. There was simply no physical evidence, no fingerprints belonging to anyone else. No hair, no fibers, no trace DNA. Even the car, her last known space, was clinically clean. It was as if whoever took her had erased their presence with precision. In the 1,980 seconds, forensic science was far less advanced than it is today. DNA profiling was only beginning to be used in criminal investigations, and without a crime scene or a body, the police had almost nothing to test. Witness accounts conflicted. Composite sketches led nowhere. Phone records and client lists turned up blank. The name Mr. Kipper, strange and unsettling, did not connect to any known person. Investigators were left chasing a ghost. The lack of evidence also created a painful legal stalemate. Even though John Cannan was considered the prime suspect, the Crown Prosecution Service ruled in 2002 that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. Without concrete proof, a trial could easily collapse. For the Lamplugh family, that decision felt like a second loss, the loss of justice itself. The case became a lesson in the limits of law enforcement, how a perfect crime does not always mean genius, but opportunity. Suzy's disappearance happened before widespread CCTV, before digital records, before the technology that now fills in so many investigative gaps. Her killer exploited that gap completely. Every few years, police teams would reopen the case, armed with new tools, and hope that time might finally give up its secrets. But each time they searched, whether a basement, a garden, or an empty lot, the result was the same: empty ground, cold silence. Without evidence, there could be no closure, only memory. And so, the story of Suzy Lamplugh became not just a mystery, but a haunting reminder that sometimes even the brightest minds and the strongest systems can do everything right and still have nothing to hold on to. The Suzy Lamplugh investigation refused to fade quietly into history. Every few years, new detectives inherited the case, file a heavy archive, of interviews, maps, theories, and unanswered questions. They all shared the same goal: to find the missing link that decades of searching had failed to uncover. In 2000, the case was officially reopened, and investigators re-examined every detail through the lens of new forensic science. They followed leads into the West Midlands, focusing again on John Cannan's past movements. In 2002, prosecutors reviewed the evidence for a possible murder charge, but once more, it was not enough. There was still no body, no weapon, no DNA, just circumstantial suspicion. Then came 2010, when police launched another large-scale review using advanced technology, digital mapping, refined witness analysis, and cross-referencing old statements with modern databases. They also appealed publicly for anyone who had known Mr. Est, Kipper, to come forward. Dozens of calls came in. None led anywhere concrete. In 2018, and again in 2019, excavators dug through soil and rubble for days under heavy press coverage. The hope was that, after all these years, Suzy might finally be found. But when the dig ended, nothing was uncovered. The ground kept its secrets. Each reopening brought new attention, new headlines, renewed grief for the Lamplugh family, and fleeting national hope that closure was near. But the result was always the same: no discovery, no justice. Over time, the case became less about finding a culprit and more about preserving memory. Detectives who once worked the case in their 20s have since retired. The streets where Suzy disappeared have changed, but her name remains one of Britain's most enduring mysteries, a cold case that refuses to stay cold. What began as a personal tragedy soon reshaped how an entire country thought about safety. Suzy Lamplugh's disappearance was not just another headline. It forced Britain to look directly at the dangers faced by people, especially women working alone. The shock of losing a young professional in daylight, without warning or witness, sparked a movement for change. Her parents, Paul and Diana Lamplugh, refused to let her name fade into another unsolved mystery. Within months of her disappearance, they founded the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, turning grief into purpose. Their mission was simple, but revolutionary for the time: to make personal safety a national concern. They began educating real estate agents, social workers, and other loan professionals about risk awareness, how to meet clients safely, how to record locations, and how to trust intuition when something felt wrong. The Trust's work quickly gained traction. In the late 1980 seconds and 1990 seconds, it became a prominent voice in shaping workplace safety laws and personal protection campaigns across the UK. The phrase "lone worker policy," now standard in many industries, was born from that effort. Police forces, universities, and corporate organizations started referencing the Lamplugh guidelines as models of practical safety. For the public, Suzy's name became both a symbol of loss and a warning, a reminder that vigilance could save lives. The Trust also expanded its mission beyond lone worker safety to tackle stalking, a threat that had begun to grow in the digital age. Their campaigns helped drive changes in UK legislation, including the Protection from Harassment Act of 1997 and later the Stalking Protection Orders of 2020. Even as decades passed with no answers about Suzy herself, her legacy evolved into something larger, a shift in how society protects its citizens. From workplace handbooks to national safety training, Suzy Lamplugh's story continues to protect thousands, a voice of caution born from silence. Nearly 40 years after Suzy Lamplugh vanished, the name most associated with her case, John Cannan, finally left the headlines for good. On November 6, 2024, he died in prison at the age of 70. For the Lamplugh family, it was a strange kind of ending. The man long believed to hold the truth was gone, and with him went any chance of hearing it from his own mouth. Cannan had spent decades denying involvement. In interviews, he spoke in circles, sometimes smirking at reporters' questions, sometimes refusing to answer at all. His death stirred a mix of emotions. Across Britain, not relief, not closure, but resignation. The public had waited nearly 4 decades for a confession that never came. News outlets revisited the story, filling front pages with side-by-side photos of Suzy and Cannan, each frozen in time. Her family released a brief statement through the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, saying they were grateful that the man suspected of harming Suzy will never hurt anyone again, yet deeply saddened that the mystery still remained unsolved. Her brother Richard spoke more plainly. He has taken his secrets to the grave. Investigators confirmed that Cannan had made no deathbed confession, no letter, no clue. Files on the case remained open, though, realistically, police admitted the odds of new leads were slim. Still, they emphasized that without a body, Suzy's case would always be treated as unresolved. Cannan's death closed a long and bitter chapter, but it did not end the book. Instead, it left a void that echoed through every anniversary and every retelling. The suspect was gone, but the silence stayed. In a way, his final act was not violence. It was omission. By dying without telling the truth, he left the story unfinished, forcing others to keep searching in his place. When word spread that John Cannan had died, many expected the Lamplugh family to feel some measure of relief, but the truth was far quieter and far heavier. There is no closure without truth, Suzy's brother, Richard, told reporters. For nearly 40 years, their family had lived inside the same unbroken question. What happened to Suzy Cannan's death did not answer it. It only sealed it shut. The family had learned to live in a strange rhythm, balancing public advocacy with private grief. Every new search, every news headline reopened the wound. Yet each time, when the digging stopped or the evidence came up empty, they were left exactly where they started. Hope became something complicated, a mix of faith, fatigue, and resignation. For her parents, Paul and Diana, closure had already become an illusion long before their passing. Both devoted the rest of their lives to the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, transforming sorrow into service. They died still, not knowing what became of their daughter. By the time Cannan's death was announced, only Suzy's siblings remained to carry the memory and the unanswered question. The word closure is often used lightly in crime stories, but here it means something impossible, the quiet that comes from understanding. The Lamplughs never got that quiet. Instead, they were left with anniversaries marked by interviews, charity events, and reminders that their sister's face had become both a warning and a legacy. When journalists asked whether they still believed the truth would come out, Richard said something that lingered with many. "I think we have accepted that knowing may never come, but remembering must never stop." That simple statement captured what remained when justice failed. A family's endurance, stretched across decades, still refusing to let the story fade into history. Even after nearly 4 decades, Suzy Lamplugh's disappearance remains one of Britain's most haunting mysteries. The case is still listed as open by the Metropolitan Police, categorized as both a missing person investigation and a suspected homicide. There is no closure, no conviction, and most painfully no trace of Suzy herself. Over time, the story has grown beyond the details of the crime. It has become a mirror of everything that frustrates modern justice: how one person can vanish despite hundreds of witnesses, how technology and time can still fail to bridge the gaps that silence leaves behind. For many Britons, Suzy's name carries an eerie familiarity. A case they might not fully remember, but one that feels embedded in the country's collective memory. Every few years, a new wave of attention resurfaces. A documentary, a podcast, a renewed police statement. And each time, people find themselves caught between fascination and sadness. What keeps the story alive is not just the lack of answers. It is the feeling that the truth is still somewhere out there, buried beneath years of misunderstanding or misplaced evidence. Cold case experts continue to review Suzy's file, hoping that advances in forensic science, particularly in DNA recovery and digital reconstruction, might one day reveal something missed. There is still a chance, however slim, that a piece of physical evidence may emerge from storage, or that someone long silent might finally speak. But until that happens, Suzy's case stands as a paradox, a tragedy both frozen in time and forever moving forward through retelling. Every mention of her name, every documentary or anniversary vigil, keeps her story breathing fragile, unresolved, and echoing through generations who still wonder what really happened on that bright July afternoon in 1986. Though the mystery of her disappearance remains, Suzy Lamplugh's story became something far larger than the crime itself. Out of tragedy grew a quiet revolution, one that changed how Britain talks about safety, trust, and risk. The Suzy Lamplugh Trust, born from her parents' determination, evolved into one of the UK's leading voices on personal protection and stalking prevention. Over the years, the Trust's influence reached into government policy, law enforcement training, and even corporate procedures. They helped introduce nationwide lone worker safety standards, created national awareness campaigns about harassment, and pushed for legal reforms that gave victims stronger protection. In many ways, the Trust filled the silence left by Suzy's absence, turning pain into purpose, loss into law. Today, the organization continues its work under the same mission, ensuring that no one else vanishes under preventable circumstances. They train thousands of professionals each year, from real estate agents to health workers, teaching practical safety, digital privacy, and awareness of stalking behaviors. Their campaigns have shaped how employers protect staff and how victims of harassment are supported. Beyond policy, though, the legacy lives in something simpler: the way people remember her name. For many young women entering the workforce, Suzy's story is still cited in safety training sessions and university talks. She has become a symbol not of fear, but of awareness. In the end, Suzy's life, though short, altered the everyday habits of countless others. The laws, the programs, the public conversations that exist today all trace back to a single missing woman and a family that refused to stop asking why. Her story is proof that even when justice fails, change can still rise from what is lost. Today, the name Suzy Lamplugh means more than a single tragedy. It represents a collective memory. Her story reshaped how Britain understood vulnerability in everyday life, especially for those who worked alone or met strangers as part of their job. She became a kind of cultural shorthand. When someone says, "We follow Suzy Lamplugh protocols," they mean they have learned from her loss. True crime, documentaries, books, and podcasts still return to her case, not for sensationalism, but because it captures something unresolved in the human mind, the discomfort of a story with no end. Each retelling becomes a way to process that unfinished grief. She is remembered not just as a victim, but as a quiet force that changed laws, awareness, and habits. Schools mention her in discussions about personal safety. Police recruits study her case when learning how missing person investigations evolved. Young agents in real estate are taught never to meet clients alone. In that sense, her absence continues to guide the living. Nearly 4 decades later, Suzy's face, bright, hopeful, confident, still looks out from old posters and anniversary articles. The details of her disappearance may blur with time, but her impact does not. She is part of Britain's moral landscape now, a reminder that vigilance and compassion must coexist, that prevention matters as much as justice, and that even in silence, one person's story can move an entire nation to do better. Suzy Lamplugh never came home, yet her legacy did, finding a home in the laws, protections, and awareness that her story inspired. Nearly 40 years after that summer afternoon in 1986, the mystery of Suzy Lamplugh remains as haunting as ever. A woman full of promise walked out to meet a client, and in doing so, walked into history. No body, no confession, no ending. Only a ripple that changed how a country thought about safety, trust, and vulnerability. Her story reminds us that evil does not always announce itself. It can arrive politely, with a handshake and a smile, hidden in the routines of daily life. But it also reminds us that love, persistence, and purpose can outlast even the darkest silence. From her family's grief grew a movement that protects thousands of lives each year. From one disappearance came an entire vocabulary of awareness, laws, safety training, and empathy built in her name. Suzy's case is unsolved, but not forgotten. The world she left behind has become safer because of her, and that may be the quiet justice she never got in life. Thank you for staying until the end of tonight's story. If you found Suzy's journey as powerful as it is tragic, take a moment to reflect on how small acts, a call, a precaution, a moment of doubt, can change everything. Stay safe, stay kind, and I will see you in the next story.